Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Will Terry. And all three of us are professional illustrators. We've all worked for all the major publishers in the business. Together we published somewhere around 75 children's books, and we've all taught illustration at university art programs.
That is right. Each week we come at you guys with fantastic illustrator interviews or questions from people just like you. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we argue, but each time you learn something brand spanking new.
Now, can I tell you something really quick?
Yeah,
Can I just tell you something really quick?
Go for it.
If I were listening to this podcast, I would just double tap or triple tap the intro.
Everybody does that, but there's some new people every time, and they need to know who we are and what we're doing. You can't just go dive right into it.
I know. I'm thinking of mixing up the podcast a little bit and
just starting right in.
Just start right into it. Play a little something. We'll still record that because we need that to get into the podcast mode. It's like a cue to our brains that now
it's put the phone down.
I'm going to go one step further. I'm going to start the podcast mid-sentence.
Let's hear. How does that sound?
And then my tire fell off.
Right.
Sounds good. We'll see how that works. We'll try it out. We'll workshop that. See how it works. No, Lee, you were going to tell us what's going on with the 6-hour workday. What's going on?
Wait, I don't get to lead in with a song?
No, not this time.
I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. These time management tips, where I'm trying to save you hours each day.
That's not bad.
Right off the top of my head.
Bad. That's your best song yet.
As you guys know, the people that are listening and followed us for a little bit, we play around with productivity. Me and Jake do. Will is somewhere else doing pickleball. He's not worried about
Will's got the work-life balance figured out.
That's productive, though.
Yeah,
that is productive.
He's got the laissez-faire attitude. But me and Jake always messing around with it. And it's to some success, some degree of success, and every time I implement some system, it fails in some portion. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that the consistency of my moving things around, trying different stuff, is that I'm really trying to fit more and more and more in. And that is the hurdle that I never seem to clear. It always knocks me down once something happens, I got to take my kid to the doctor, and then it just sort of messes everything up. And then the big thing for me is I overschedule, and then when I actually go do something fun, I feel guilty about it because I feel like I already wrote it that I should be working or something, and it's really hard to stay on top of it. Anyway, so I'm doing some research on trying to find better work-life balances and things that actually work according to my schedule, where I don't just write stuff down and then not be able to do it. That's the problem I was trying to solve. So I came across this article. Oops, I just spilled my coffee. I got to write that in my planner now. Just kidding. I came across this article about a 6-hour workday, and so I'm kind of poking around the internet, and so I decided to read it, and it was really interesting. The studies that they had done. There's a couple of countries that are kind of implementing this, mainly in the Netherlands, some areas of Europe, and they work for basically 6 hours, and what they found is that by scheduling those 6 hours as a block, you tend to work a little bit more intensively, and then you're done. And so they found that people that work 6 hours a day tend to get more done than people that work 8 to 10 hours a day. And they're finding that the 8-hour workday is a holdover from the industrial age. I mean, it's sort of ridiculous, to be honest with you. But we're so programmed into that Monday through Friday, sort of the 9 to what used to be 9 to 5 has become 9 to 6, and I think has even more recently become 8 to 6. That's what people try to say. Again, overscheduling. I can't get this much stuff done, so I just need to keep adding hours to what it would be my work day. But we all know you can't work that long, so you end up, messing around. You end up surfing the web, reading news or whatever, scrolling Instagram, because you just can't stay productive that long. Hey, talk amongst yourself for 1 second. I gotta get something to clean up this coffee.
You just sort of find yourself ending up at the pickleball court somehow when you have an 8-hour day.
This actually goes right along. I'm reading this book. I'm like, just a few pages shy of ending it, but it's Slow Productivity by Cal Newport. And his whole thing there is, what's the cover says? The cover says, The Lost Art of Accomplishment Without Burnout. And he has like these 3 pillars of slow productivity. And that is that you can get more done by doing less. And pillar number 1 is you work at a natural pace. Pillar number 2 is you do fewer things. And pillar number 3 is you obsess over quality. And he says when you combine these things together, you can actually become more accomplished, make better work by putting in, I wouldn't say like, his whole thing is like doing he has another book called Deep Work, where it's like every human brain has like 4 hours a day where they can actually do deep work. And if you set yourself up just right and you get into that zone, you could actually be more productive in those few hours than throughout the entire day. And part of the whole setup of this book is he talks about knowledge workers. That's essentially workers who have to use their brains for work. So writers, artists, musicians, people who like analyze data, right? People who program computers, things like that, where it's not like I'm just sitting here putting together a car, or I'm fixing a toilet or something like that. That's more of like a hands-on labor type of situation. But he says in this sector of knowledge work, we've gotten into pseudo productivity where you are busy and you're working on stuff, but you're actually not being productive. You're you zeroed out your inbox. You've cleaned out all the emails in your inbox, and everybody's been responded to. But did you actually move the needle on any of your projects by doing that? No, you just sort of tidied up the place. It's akin to like sweeping the floor, right? So his whole thing is, if you do fewer things, you work at a natural pace, and you obsess over quality, at the end of a year or at the end of 2 years, you'll have something of real value to offer in the sector that you're working in. So you'll have an album, you'll have a graphic novel, you'll have like an amazing children's book. And that's something that can pay dividends over years because it's such a good thing. And so I think this aligns pretty well with what Lee's saying, in that if you give yourself 6 hours to do the work, you'll cut out all the fat. Right. Instead of thinking that you have 8 hours to like clean out the inbox, right?
I tell you, the difference that it's made in my day is interesting. I've been doing it for about a week now, and so here's how it has landed, in just for me personally.
I want to know.
So I like to work out, but I find myself again struggling for time to work out because I feel like I should be in the studio working.
Right.
So the hours I gave myself, my 6 hours, I looked at my day, not my ideal day. That's another problem, by the way, with scheduling and trying to figure out productivity, is you plan your perfect day. Oh, you woke up at 5 a.m., bright and, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. You're ready to sit down and work. Well, the real day is I keep hitting my snooze until 6. And then I got to take my, I want to start working early, but I've got to take my kid to school. That's got to be factored in there. All these the reality of it. So I said, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., I can definitely be in my studio. There's nothing distracting me on 99% of the days between those hours. So that's the little block that I gave myself. And so what that did, because I do still wake up at around 5:30 or 6, just naturally. And so now all of a sudden, say I'm up at 6 a.m., I have a 3-hour window to drink coffee slowly, to go for a run, to go work out. I'm not stressed because I've got 3 hours to get in the gym. And, even if I did a workout, that still leaves 2 free hours to do whatever I want, walk the dogs, eat breakfast, whatever. And so all of a sudden, this weird pressure went away in the morning block. I sit down at 9 a.m., how I've divided that 6 hours is, let me back up a little bit. At the beginning of the year, I talked about breaking projects into quarters, quarterly, and that has been a game changer too. So I am only working on my tarot deck right now. That is it. And so I thought to myself, how many of those 6 hours can I dedicate to just the tarot deck? That's my only project I'm trying to output right now. And what else needs to happen? So I thought 4 hours out of the 6 is going to go to that creative work, and then 1 hour of admin, and then I'm going to start 1 hour just starting on whatever the next project is going to be, because the problem with big projects, and I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but for me, the problem with big projects is you get done with the project and then you have to start whatever is next from absolute scratch. And that there's a big gestation period for the next deliverable. So just starting to get into what the next deliverable is going to be, which is probably for me going to be traditional watercolor classes and some other stuff that I've been wanting to do. So 4 hours creative tarot, 1 hour admin, 1 hour starting to move my project B along.
Yeah.
And oh my God. And then you're off at 3:00 in the afternoon. Like my kid hasn't even gotten out of school barely by then.
Right.
And so I've got the rest now that, summer daylight savings has come and the days are getting longer. I got like a 6 hour window to go play disc golf, to go on a bike ride, to go whatever. And
do you skip lunch?
I grab lunch at the desk. Like I plan on like a sandwich, something so easy. I don't stop. During those 6 hours, I do not stop. And it's an intense 6 hours. What Cal Newport says, if you remember this, Jake, from Deep Work, is if you're really grinding, you do not have 8 hours of intense work. It's impossible to stay super focused. Right. But all of a sudden, I've started going through all these cards in my deck and like getting all these sketches done. I've got all the plans for this current group that I'm working on, and it took away the stress. It's kind of amazing. I'm just going to throw that out there. It's the most natural schedule that I've been able to find out of all the different stuff I've done.
The way I break it down, though, is I like the idea of 4 hours of one project A, 1 hour of admin, 1 hour of project B. The way I've been doing my schedule is I give entire days to project B. So if the week is 5 days long, I'm going to do 3 days on project A, 2 days on project B. So that way I've got,
nice.
There's I have this idea in my head of like a train, right? And the train, if you've ever been on a train, they don't like take off like a race car, like a rocket. They get going. And then once that train gets going, it can get up to 660 miles per hour, 70, 80, bullet trains could go 200 miles per hour, but it takes a little while to get up there. And then it takes a little while for it to slow back down, right? And so I look at projects the same way. There's these big trains, you got to get them going. And once you get going, to do that context shift, to be on this train and then be like, oh, shoot, I got to go get email done. And then bounce back to it, and then I got to do this, and then bounce back to that.
So you like to be on the train and just have it running.
Have that train running, and then slow it down into the station, hop off, get on the other train, and take that one where it needs to go. But I again, it's whatever seems to work, and we all have like weird brains that work in certain ways, So, but I want to try.
I like that idea. My problem is I can't get the amount done in the 3 days on the project. Like right now, I'm looking at a March launch anyway, because I have 41 cards to go. It's just too much. Yeah.
What about you, Will? You've been doing the pickleball Paul books. Like you banged out 2 books on the third one. Are you working on a third one?
I have the third one written. I'm pausing to do the game.
Right.
Yeah.
So shifting from pickleball Paul books, because it was really cool to be like, I've got this idea, and then all of a sudden you're showing us finished artwork, and we're like, wait, how did that happen? How did you get that done?
I work in project spurts, so I like taking off time, chunks of time, but then when I'm on a project, I was thinking as you guys were talking, the biggest difference in my life now from, let's say, 7 or 8 years ago, and then the 25 years before that,
Yeah.
I used to take projects because I had to. I had to take everything. We spent more than we made. I made a YouTube video about this a long time ago, about melting down financially. And like, I had a dad that was really responsible financially and was trying to like impart that wisdom to me. And I was like, just resistant. I had to learn through sad experiences, right? Mm-hmm. And this will come full circle because, so I worked 12 hours a day because I had to, sometimes 14 hours a day, right? Mm-hmm. And my dad, to keep the family going, worked 2 jobs a lot of times. He worked 16 hours. So I was like, that's kind of what I have to do, right? And I wanted to take my family on vacations that we couldn't afford and do stuff. And because of that, you know, I was always, the spending created the demand for work. So I never could think like, the reason you can think like that, Lee, on a 6-hour work week is partially because you're responsible financially, right? You've got your finances in order. But if you don't, then the work kind of runs you. And right now, so that's like one of the things that do you want to jump in?
I disagree only because based on the studies of what they're saying is, I'm not advocating that, oh, cool, I'm in a place where I don't have to work as hard as I used to. Mm-hmm. I'm at a place where, or at least what the article kind of backs up, is the people who are working 8 to 10 hours a day are not being as effective as they can be. Now, if somebody's grinding for 10 hours a day, that's impressive. And if they have to do that, but my question is, can you, like Jake said, trim the fat and take that 10-hour workday and turn it into a 6-hour workday? I'm not advocating for people be like, what you're saying is like, okay, you're kind of partially retired, so you were able to get rid of the time, but I'm actually producing more in the 6-hour workday than I was in the 9-hour
I get that.
Workday.
Well, I guess what I'm saying more than anything is, if you looked at the way that we live right now, a lot of people would be, okay, so we live in a retirement community that is seasonal, right? Mm-hmm. And there's only like 30 or 40% of the people that live here year round, like us. And so we live amongst people where this is their second or third home.
Will and Lily, not the 3 of us.
Yes. Yeah.
We all live together.
So people that find out that we're here full time are like, oh, you're poor. And I don't care that if they want to think that because I'm socking a lot of money into investments right now for retirement. But basically, if I lived like you're supposed to, quote unquote, right, and had a normal house and all, I would feel the need to work a lot more than I do right now. Grind a little bit more to pay for everything. Well, and I think
the idea of limiting your expenses can be applied to anybody in any situation.
Right. Right. And so, but I do understand also that there's more productive times. I think getting older, I can't work like I used to. Mm-hmm. I can't focus like I used to. Sometimes I wonder if
that's a real factor. I'm bumping up to that now too.
I wonder if it's social media too, because I know that my attention span isn't what it used to be. But if I get on something that I really love doing, like this game that I've been working on,
right,
I can work really long hours again because I'm loving it. So that's a huge part too. If you love what you're doing, and I spent the first part of my career taking on projects that I hated because I needed the money. And I looked at my friend Brett Helquist, who was only taking on these amazing book projects, and then he'd go long swaths of time without any illustration work, working as a temp. And I'm like, why don't you take more illustration work? And he's like, I don't want to take stuff that I don't feel like I can give my best on. And meanwhile,
isn't that nice?
I'm taking but he suffered, he sacrificed. And meanwhile, I'm taking on projects that I'm dread getting up for. And the whole reason we got into this was because we want to love our job, right?
Right.
So it didn't make any sense. So,
ironic.
So I turned down so much stuff. I had an attorney the other day who wanted me to work on his book, and he was offering all kinds of money, and I'm like, I'm not doing it. It's just not.
Well, there's a caveat to this system. I will acknowledge what you're saying, Will, and that the 3 of us at a certain point, everyone has to put in the hours.
Yeah.
And what that may look like for you is you're a full-time student and you're having to work to supplement it, or you're working a full-time job, you got your 40 hours a week, and then you have illustration on top of it. You're trying to, get that career going. And I don't think there's any way around that moment. Those years, let's just say 5 to 7 years of absolute hell work in terms of like, you wake up and you draw and paint, and when you get off work, you draw and paint. And there's the sacrifice that comes there. And I do agree with Will, or back me up, Will, if you do agree with that there's no way around that moment. What the difference is, what Will is saying, is that we are full-time illustrators now, so we are dictating our day in ways that I realize a lot of people can't yet.
Right.
So that is there. And the other thing I want to add to that little caveat is the three of us know our process so well. I could do the process. I'll give a quote that H.R. Geiger, I remember reading his biography. He was like, you need to be so comfortable with your tools that you could be wasted drunk and still make a painting with no problem. I haven't tested that theory with myself, but I do feel comfortable enough to where the process of making art is not in the way. Like, once I know what an image is going to, I want to draw and paint, I just go draw and paint it. I'm not struggling like, oh, this didn't look like I wanted it to, or I don't know what to do here. You know what I mean? It just goes along, and you have to get at that point, and that's what probably one of the byproducts of the sacrifice years is. You get to know your process. You know how to make an image. You're not wondering whether an image is going to work or not anymore.
Right. Well, and that's a big reason we did How to Fix Your Art, is so many people were submitting artwork to the critique arena and to these different like contests that we did with SVS that had these like glaring problems that were like, how can you not see this particular problem right here? And then we realized, these people need a checklist. They need, and we need this. I've actually used our How to Fix Your Art checklist as well, the same way. It's like, did I do this? Did I do that? Let me check this. And like, you know what? I didn't, I didn't cross-check that my values were good in this. So let's look at it, make sure the lights are over the darks and the darks are over the lights, stuff like that, right? But yeah, once you get to that point, there's times where I like take on a job because I'm so confident in my image making abilities. Sometimes I'll take a job where I know it like pushes me out of that comfort zone a little bit because it isn't, it might be more painterly, or it might rely a little bit more on light and shadow, where, I'm more on the technical like design side of things. And those jobs always take 3 times as long than what I expect, because I am going through and I'm like messing around with, figuring out my process again. But I think that's part of like keeping illustration fresh and keeping your skills sharp, is also like pushing yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone. And I'm going to bring this back to the 6-hour workday. When you are able to get into that mindset of cutting out the fat and really focusing on, you've got all these different tasks, and look at, kind of audit all the tasks that you do. And does this task, does the time put in this task equal the amount of money I'm getting from it, or the amount of, essentially you're working for money, right? If we're in hobby land right now, then you're like, does the amount of time I'm putting into this get me the learning results that I want, or the joy results that I want? And that's a whole different metric. But if this is a career or a job thing for you, then you have to look at it and see, okay, is this a 2x task? Is this a 3x task? All the way up to, is this a 10x task? And if you put your time and effort into those 10x tasks, it's going to give you the flexibility and the freedom to waste a little more time on these 2x, 3x things. So like for me, my Patreon is like a 2x, maybe a 1x task, right? Where I put in a half hour a week into updating the Patreon and spending time in the Patreon, and I get about $600 to $700 a month from patrons, right? And so if you do the math on that, I'm making $50 to $100 an hour on Patreon any given month. And so that, to me, it's like, yeah, that's well worth my time. But if I put in an hour into something like Self-Publishing Pro or Graphic Novel Pro, the course I'm working on now, or Children's Book Pro, that has the ability to 10x the time, because now that work is being, we launch a class again. We launch a class 10 times, before it runs its course or whatever. And that money pays it back over and over and over again. So you have to go and look at, like, really, is this a 2x or a 3x or a 10x, and make sure that you're getting time for that. And then going back to what Lee was saying about, are you working a full-time job and then doing illustration at nights, and you're trying to make that shift into full-time illustration? If you're able to adopt this 6-hour workday for your, like, day job, and really, like, not volunteer for anything that is,
try to
is
hide.
not a part of your job. Try to hide a little bit, but I would say putting your time into 10x things that for your boss is like, hey, yeah, I didn't go to those 2 meetings because I was focused on this solving this problem that's going to save the company, $10,000 this month. Mm-hmm. Your boss is going to be like, oh yeah, I'd rather you do that than be at that meeting for 2 hours. If you're able to do that and able to put your 6 hours in at work and make it look, and essentially give them a 40-hour work week that you do in, I don't know, what's the math, 36 hours or no, 6 times 5 is 30 hours. You shave off 10 hours. You
right.
tell math. I did not put my time into learning math. Right. Okay, so now you've got extra 10 hours in your work day throughout the week to devote to your other craft, mm-hmm. right? And putting in that little extra time, especially if you work at home and you'd be like, yeah, everything's done. I can take Fridays off now, or whatever. And then you could put that into illustration and learning your craft and getting better at that part. So it's like, I think the advice applies to anybody at any stage. Cut the fat, work on the things that are going to give you a 10 times return on what you put into them. And I think that's like the path forward to having a little bit more freedom and a little bit more, availability in your life to balance it with other things. Because I think too, like, you can't be working all the time.
Right.
You have to go get some sun and see people and play a sport or have a hobby. Or you're going to make dull work. You're not going to be an interesting illustrator.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to add one thing to the idea. I like that idea. What you're talking about is assigning sort of a value to the projects that you're doing. And we're big advocates, obviously, of self-publishing and making your own way now, like mm-hmm. coming up with something and making it. And the one thing I wanted to add is when you do decide to do that and you go all in, you actually throw your hat in the ring and say, I'm going to make this thing. Mm-hmm. Weird stuff sort of starts to happen along the way. It's kind of like when you talk about going on vacation versus actually planning a trip. You start finding the hikes you want to do or the buildings or the resources. And the same is true for a project. And, my full tarot deck's a year away. I'm launching in March of next year. Mm-hmm. But I'm posting now. I've stopped all sketching for any other project. I'm only posting tarot stuff to my Instagram. I'm just using it as a way to feed the whole thing. And I'm just being transparent about how I'm building the whole thing. Well, now it's sort of starting to get out there a little bit. And this morning I got an email from a company in Japan, a publishing company in Japan that wants to include the tarot deck in a huge book on tarot and the history of the cards, and kind of they're including mine and sort of where tarot is going and sort of a modern interpretation of it. And so they're including my deck in there. And I never, ever would have imagined that before, if I was just like, oh, maybe I should do this, maybe I shouldn't. And so the idea that I'm pushing is you just got to go sort of all in on something and think about the idea. Like, that's my 10X project for sure. And just lean into it. And then all of a sudden the people out there that like that thing will start to gravitate towards it, and opportunities that you didn't know about will start to be presented to you if you put it out in the world. But it doesn't happen unless you put in the work and just put it out there with that idea that this is going to be big.
Mm-hmm.
I have a tarot deck question for you. What do you know the demographics of tarot deck creators? Like, is it a nice balance between guys and girls who are like making these tarot decks, or is it shifted, lean one way or the other?
It's interesting. It seems like a pretty even mix. I don't know if it's 50-50, but it looks that way in the research that I've done between male and female, old and young. It's kind of all over the place. I don't see one major demographic jumping out as the creators.
What about the users?
Same with that. The users tend to be, I don't want to say older, but like I'd say early 20s and 30s is probably the beginning of the bell-shaped curve. And then, I'd say maybe 35 would be like the high point of the bell-shaped curve. But a lot of new users coming in. Female
users on that, do you think?
Like I said, that's what I would have thought I don't even know why I would think that, but it's been pretty even, at least in the, all the Facebook groups I'm joining and stuff. It seems pretty even.
That's interesting. I was kind of there with Will, where the only people in my life personally who I know do it are women, but that doesn't mean that's just my...
Right, your two-person sample size.
Yeah, my two-person sample size. But that's the thing too. It's like we were on a call with our Self-Publishing Pro people, and we were talking about preparing, doing research for your project, I believe, because we have a week where we kind of train. We have these video training, and then we answer questions about really zeroing in and finding who your audience is and what kind of product they want and what kind of thing they do. And I started sharing some of my spreadsheets that I make for different projects that I do. And I have this research phase that I do, and I don't know, it was amazing to me how many of these people were like, oh my gosh, holy cow, I didn't realize you put this much time and effort into research. But I had this spreadsheet where I was been researching, doing like stationery or productivity sort of stationary type stuff. And I had this spreadsheet where it's just like, here's the list of websites that sort of curate what other people are doing, right? So you could stay aware of what's going on in the industry. Here's all of every time as I was researching and finding out who was doing all this kind of stuff, every time I found a really good example of someone doing a business doing this, put that down on the list. And so I had this list of hundreds of like creators out there doing this thing, organized by, are we more focused on greeting cards, or are we more focused, this group is more focused on productivity, this group is more focused on like gifts and things like that. And then resources of who, of essentially courses and lectures and videos that explain how to do this kind of stuff. And then, it's just this long list of that, and of every, resources of manufacturers that you can reach out to get your stuff printed or get your stuff manufactured. That's the kind of like deep dive research that you have to do, I think, on any project that you're going on, unless again you're in hobby zone, right? And I don't use that word degradingly at all, like or derogatorily at all. Like, hobbies should just be an escape. Like, it shouldn't be stressful,
right?
But if this is a career move and it's something that you want to have it be profitable, figure out who it is that's going to buy your thing. Figure out, they say make an avatar of this person. What's their age? What demographics? What's their relationship status? How much money do they make a year? What are their interests? And then build a thing that that really is zeroed into that type of person. Because if you know what they're wanting, what they're into, and oftentimes it could be just you, like base it off of what you're thinking. But if you don't go into it eyes wide open with that kind of thing, your project's not going to be successful. It's not going to, it has I won't say it's not going to be, it just has a harder time finding the audience that it's going to find. We kind of went out a little off there, or I decided it was a 6-hour work week, and then it went into research.
I went into a 6-hour podcast on that.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I think it's a good topic because it's literally how people spend their day. So it's fun to talk about how to organize it, you know.
We have a couple questions. Should we get into those?
Let's dive in.
We shall.
Shops versus portfolio sites. Let's see. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the pros and cons of having a single site that serves as both e-commerce shop and online gallery versus having two separate websites for distinct purposes. So this is a question that comes in from Jeremy. He says, I noticed that Jake and Will have their galleries and their shops on separate sites, separate platforms, and Lee has an all-in-one website. So specifically, question for me and Will is how much of that is intentional versus not being able to find a single platform that serves all of your needs at an affordable price? And then for Lee, do you feel like there are any compromises you made having a single website? So, yeah, what do you guys think? Lee, let's start with you. Why did you decide to have it all be one website instead of a separate shop?
It's too much. I mean, it's hard enough for me to maintain one site. So it's practicality really is maintaining two sites. I did get a separate website for the tarot deck from the Kickstarter I did last year, and I never updated it. It may still even say I'm running a Kickstarter soon. I mean, I haven't updated it in a year and a half. I just don't have the bandwidth to go other places, and I don't see like anybody who's come into my site and sees the images. I wanted to basically, when you land on my website, leewhiteillustration.com, you'll see a whole page of illustrations. Now, the fact that you can buy them is just a sort of a bonus, because I say if a client came there, I wouldn't think that they would be like, oh my gosh, he's selling these prints and run away. You know, they're still going to see the same images that would be in a gallery otherwise. And then the people that come in to see images may not know that stuff is for sale. They may never click that button that says shop or buy. That's my big thing. I want to make it really obvious when somebody comes in, they view an image, oh, he sells prints, or I can buy a card of this or whatever, and just make the purchase really easy. I don't want people to have to click twice even.
And it works for you, right? Like you're selling a lot of prints.
I do, yeah. I mean, it's a pretty robust. I'm sure other people do more, but it's enough to have a pretty nice side business. Yeah.
What about you, Will?
I have a separate shop on Shopify for Pickleball Paul, but I'm going to be probably bringing that back to my Squarespace site at willterry.com simply because Shopify is too complicated for me. So I can't make the changes that I want to make on my own. I have to hire someone, and I don't want to do that anymore. So I'm going to be all in one. I mean, like now, if you look at, I have an Etsy as well for prints and stuff, but that's a whole nother story. Pretty much because I didn't know how to set up my own at that time on Squarespace. Yeah. So I don't know. For me, the thing is, I hate doing that work. Like I'm like most artists, I want to just create artwork. So there really isn't. I'm not a good example of like I had this overarching plan, 20 years ago, and now it's all paying off now. I mean, yeah. I think the person that's asking this is like, you have to also remember that technology is always changing. And so what's true right now on the internet is probably not going to be true in 4 or 5 years from now. There's going to be other platforms, better options, better platforms. So, yeah, but I do think I like what you've done, Lee. I think that makes a lot of sense. Is like have your images work on multiple levels, where it's an image for a potential client, but it's also for sale. I love that idea. Yeah.
I think though it comes down to what's your goal as an illustrator. So your website is it like if you are trying to get freelance work from an animation studio and the art director or the art department there is checking out your work, they're going to want to see a very specific type of portfolio website that showcases concept art that you've done, that showcases character designs, background, whatever, layouts, storyboards, whatever. That stuff doesn't lend itself to being in a shop. If you look at Lee's portfolio, every illustration he makes is going to be a print that goes beautifully in someone's bathroom, right above the toilet. Like
in the toilet.
In the toilet, maybe. And you look at Will's stuff, and so many of his pieces too are like, that's a print that absolutely should be, over there in the laundry room behind like the dirty socks, right? Right where very few people should see it. No. So it makes sense for Will and Lee to do websites like that where they're straight up like, here's my artwork, and by the way, you could sell it as a print, because they're not necessarily angling for the particular jobs that don't overlap with like illustration work, right? I'm sort of in a different boat because I make a lot of books, so most of my shop is like books and pins, like merch type of stuff, and it just doesn't fit on my portfolio website. And my portfolio website is, look at all the concept art I've done for these different projects. Look at all the worlds that I've built for these different things. And it's more about my body of work as an illustrator and as a designer, for these particular jobs that I want to get and have gotten, and less about selling my work. And so it made sense for me to have a separate shop where I'm selling my books and my stickers and my merch of different kinds. So that's why I decided to separate the two.
Cool.
All right, next question. Amelia, is learning fundamentals a waste of time? This is a really cool, good question that got me like thinking. With the future looking increasingly AI assisted, it seems like you guys, especially Will, have been suggesting entrepreneurship. Did I pronounce that right?
Entrepreneurship, just entrepreneurship.
Entrepreneurship, not inurier. Okay, from the top. With the future looking increasingly AI assisted, it seems like you guys, especially Will, has been suggesting entrepreneurship as being the way to go, because being an illustrator may no longer be a viable career. My question is this. It used to be that most students needed to study up on art fundamentals, such as perspective, color, gesture, etc., in order to be a good illustrator. In a very new future where AI can do all of that better than us, is there a point in learning art fundamentals? Should we still be putting in time to draw 100 boxes? It feels like ideas and humanity will be the only things worth focusing on, but everyone can have those without years of studying. Thanks, Amelia.
Boy, that's a good question.
Yeah. I think people really get wrong how AI works. So AI is actually a front for a massive amount of artists that are actually dialed in, looking at the thing that you're typing in, and then they're feverishly over here drawing it as fast as they can and uploading it. And they've gotten so fast that they can upload it like in a split second amount of time. Sometimes 2 or 3 artists are working on that drawing at the same time and uploading it. And so it's actually using human brains to make these little AI drawings that everybody's posting. And so really these AI companies are looking for thousands of illustrators to do the AI drawings that people are typing in to prompts, for the prompts. That's really how it works. So the future is bright for illustrators if you want to work for an AI company.
It's like a big warehouse. Is that what you're saying?
It's this massive warehouse. If you go to Midjourney, to their base camp, there's 1 million drawing easels.
And they're doing it in real time when you type it in.
Yeah. And so sometimes you'll be getting I went and did it for a weekend. It's too much work. But you'll be getting
Jake is obviously not telling the truth here. He's messing around. But the question is, what is the result you want to get out of it? Will AI be able to make a perfect scene at some point? Sure, maybe they will. is the end result the only thing, the only reason to do art, is my question. I think that as AI gets better, there's going to be more of a premium placed on people who can make things with their hands and demonstrate it. That's why whenever I'm doing illustrations, I make videos of the process of me making it. If just the end result is like, I just want to make a pretty picture, press the button, I don't know how many people are going to be satisfied with that process. So I do think that there's going to be a place for artists. And also at the end of the day, I think you're not going to be able to get exactly what you want, even if you did press the button. So say the computer gives you a great scene of downtown Tokyo. Are you going to be able to, A, have the vision to see what's wrong with it and how to enhance it, and B, have the knowledge to implement that?
Right.
And so, there may be a future where we are working with the starting point of an AI image, and then it's getting built upon. That doesn't bother me that much, to be honest with you. That's sort of what people do. We've talked about it here before on Pinterest. Oh, I like this guy's lighting. I like this layout, and I like the way this person draws trees. Okay, I combine those things sort of in an illustration, and I've got the ability to do that. That's sort of what you're going to be doing. If AI was the starting point, I see it as just part of the process. I think there'll be more art students, to be honest with you, in the future than there is now. I don't think it's going to be a limiter. I think it's just going to change maybe the process a bit.
I have a different reason for making art, and that is it's the spiritual side. When you learn the fundamentals of art and you work really hard at something and you accomplish, you learn, and now you up your game and you're able to do things that you couldn't do before. There's a that feeds your spiritual side. It feeds your soul to be able to make something that you're proud of and that other people want and like and appreciate. There's something there that you can't get with pressing the button, right? Obviously, and that's true for making all kinds of different things. I think AI is going to push the boundaries on the way that we, the types of things that we do, and the kinds of illustrations that we make. And I think that, like you kind of alluded to, Lee, is that there's a certain amount of settling right now, and I don't know how long that'll take place, when you can't get exactly what you want out of AI, so you settle. Well, when you train yourself, you don't have to settle. You can work on something until you get it the way that your the vision of that you started out with was, And I'm thinking of my game right now. I don't think I could, at least, and I know that this is right now. This is 2024. There's no way that I could get out of AI what my vision was for the characters of that game. I could get some cool stuff, and it might actually shift my vision to going, well, that's cool. Maybe I'll go down that road instead. But it wasn't the road that I wanted to go down. It wasn't the original.
The important thing, though, Will, is that you've got the experience to be able to look at what a computer generated and say, cool, but not for me.
And make modifications.
If you didn't have the training, you would just be like, I don't know what a good analogy is. Like just somebody jumping at anything. Like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. How would you know you need to almost know what not to use. And that takes a ton of training. I want to offer an analogy. I just thought of this, and you guys tell me if this is a good analogy or not. But you might think, like, a long time ago, graphic designers had to lay out type on manually, like on boards and stuff. And it was just this really labor-intensive process to be a graphic designer back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever. Even in the 60s and 70s, I guess. But then the computer came along. I have at my fingertips, at my disposal, 1 million fonts that are already pre-made. I can just type them in there. Did that make me a good graphic designer versus somebody who knows type really well? I know it okay, but there's other, true graphic designers really understand type. That's why Will paid a graphic designer to do his book. Will could type in any font he wants to. Does he know exactly how to use that? Which font is going to be the right one? Which kerning is correct? And so, we've had other professions have the whole world at your fingertips as graphic design is the best analogy in my opinion. You can make any layout you want right now. You can just pull an image from Google. You can type in any font you want. Does that make everybody great graphic designers? Of course not.
Right. No.
In
Same
fact,
thing.
when graphic design was made by artists, there's graphic designers who are artists, but pre-computer, if you look, I always compare looking at photos of Main Street from the 50s and the 60s versus Main Street from the 90s and the 2000s. Every sign was hand painted. Every sign was the windows were hand painted and the logos were you had to find a legitimate artist to go make your store sign or your logo or something like that. And now you go down these main streets or these, State Street in Utah is in Provo is my prime example. And there's not a single sign that wasn't done by someone's cousin using clip art and a font that they pulled off, that they just found somewhere. Right. And it's and it's ugly. And maybe, for some people that's a nostalgic aesthetic, for them that it is made by, sort of non-practitioners of art, that may have its own particular kind of beauty. But I think you lose something when you don't have those fundamentals of composition understanding, of understanding, value and understanding certain design principles. The thing I was thinking here is how many of these people worried about AI have actually tried it, gotten a Midjourney account, messed with it, tried to get it to do the thing that they wanted it to do. And everybody I've talked to has done that, has either done two things, right? Every artist I know, illustrator who's done that, has done two things. They've either said, oh, my job is safe. This is not going to really change much of anything. Or B, oh, I totally get how this is going to save me some time and help me in my art creation process. And I don't mean replace my art commission or my art creation process, but I mean the same way a traditional painter who finally learns Photoshop can understand, oh, I don't have to wait for the paint to dry in order to make this change. I could just go in there and mess with it. They can look at Midjourney as a way of seeing it as a tool to help them accomplish the things they want to accomplish. And yes, there's going to be some people with zero artistic talent using Midjourney and getting some interesting results from it and some neat sort of things happening with it. But unless you have, I think, a particular kind of point of view and a particular statement that you want to say with your art, it's just going to be cranking out images for the sake of images being images, right? And so I think to answer the question, should she study fundamentals? I think that's absolutely yes. You should still learn to do fundamentals. The other thing too is you might get really good at Midjourney, and you could, I was watching a video of, I forget the artist's name, but Draw with Jazza, the Australian YouTuber guy. It's his brother. And he posted a video of how he uses AI tools to make his art, right? And he's going back and forth of here, I tell it to generate this particular image. I cut it apart in Photoshop. I upload certain sections. It changes. He's using Stable Diffusion. And in Stable Diffusion, you could tell it to just generate, a selected area on an image. So you could get really dialed in and you can make a thing. But the final image that he made, after using all these cool tools and messing around and doing it, it still had two light sources. The sun was behind it, but the character was being lit from the front. Right. There was still weird anatomy stuff that wasn't correct, that just looked a little bit off. All these things that if he had the fundamentals figured out, he could have made, an amazing image. And that doesn't count the bigger point of this is what happens if Midjourney or Stable Diffusion or ChatGPT or any of these things go bankrupt for whatever reason, or the government outlaws them for whatever reason, or restricts them so much that they can't afford to be around anymore. And your entire skill set is based on using that particular program. You're out of luck because you don't know how to draw a box from a different angle, right? You don't know how to light or shadow it. I'll tell you right now, if Adobe announced today, sorry, we're going out of business, and we made it magically that nobody's Adobe works anymore, I'm fine with that. I'm just going to grab a piece of paper, my pens, my markers, and I'll go make my comics traditionally. It doesn't make any difference on my ability to make art.
But that would suck.
But that would suck.
Like, if Midjourney went down and all that, the artists are having these copyright lawsuits and stuff. If all of a sudden all these programs go down, those people are going to lose their entire ability because their ability fully relied on the AI. It's super lame.
Think about it.
People are more worried than they need to be.
When we're living in the Mad Max world and we're setting up our little shops and stuff, we're going to go back to a time where, artists are needed to make the signage to sell the stuff again, right?
I'm going back farther. Exactly. I'm going to go and start doing cave paintings. I'm going back.
You're gonna be making tarot decks for out of like wood bark and
like Fred Flintstone style.
Animal blood, ground up bones.
We were. You guys know we went to Jerome, Arizona over the weekend, and we sat down, and this guy was apparently blowing glass is becoming a lost art. There's this, it's so expensive to get into it. And to apprentice is it's really hard to find a place to do it. It's dangerous work because you can get cut and burned. You will get cut and burned. And a lot of younger people aren't interested. So it's kind of dying. And this guy he looked like he was in his late 80s doing this blown glass thing. And people were mesmerized. There was a little bit of seating in there, and we went in and had a seat, and all these people wanted to come in and couldn't get in, and we're sitting there watching this guy, and it's fascinating him talking about watching him do it, watching all the stuff that he's got to do and all the things that can go wrong. And at the end, these people over here had to buy one to take home. We bought one. Other people were buying them. And it was because you watch this thing being made by hand.
Yeah. It didn't get pressed out of a factory.
Yeah. I have a feeling that AI is really going to push people to wanting more of the human connection in a lot of ways,
Yeah. And it turns everybody who uses it turns them into an art director instead of an artist. And an art director is its own set of disciplines and skill sets. Which
you're saying, you mean AI is turning the users into art directors instead of creators?
The users into art directors.
Yeah.
And so, but the best art directors are the ones who spent 20 years in the trenches being art directed and knowing what works and what doesn't work and what looks good and what doesn't look good. And just being able to look at cool images and have a cool idea for a cool image doesn't make you a good art director. But that's what Midjourney is sort of turning people into thinking they are. It's look, I was able to make this thing. We're setting aside the whole nasty aspect of it, where all this art, all these things are trained on art that was stolen. So beside that, and the reason I don't bring that up is because there's no way to solve that problem other than short of putting these companies out of business. But the technology still exists. So let's say you put Midjourney out of business, someone's going to be like, well, we have that technology and we'll just make it over here. So it's kind of like a hydra. You're going to chop off one head and then two heads are going to grow out of the stump.
It's a waste of time to think that it's going away.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, how many decades did people wish that cars would die? Right. I mean, it's true. Look at the history
even
of
today,
the automobile.
People are wishing cars would die. And, and there's good cases for how they're destroying, well, not just the environment, but destroying quality of life. Especially, I don't want to get into cars. but I'll just say living in Gilbert, Arizona, where it is a car town, like you can't go anywhere unless you have a car. If you try to ride your bike somewhere or walk somewhere,
it's going to get run over.
It's dumb. Okay, last question.
Well, let me add one more little thing to that. People should just get used to change. Things are always going to change.
Yeah.
Technology, tools, technology, it's all going to change. It never ends everything like they always said. TV didn't end radio, and it's just silly to worry so much about all that.
Markets
let's
come
get into
and
the next one.
Markets come and go. New markets emerge. Old markets die. Always.
Yeah, just be ready to change. That's the big thing, in my opinion.
Yep. And I'll add one more thing to that too, is all these AI images, even though they're getting better, they still have a certain aesthetic to them.
It's certain weird, style right?
to them. Yeah, but it also is of the moment. So 10 years from now, you're going to see an AI image that was created now and be like, oh, that's out of style. Like, that doesn't look good at all.
Right.
Okay, last question comes from Norman. Subject, it's a write-off. How can I use my trip to Japan as a business expense? Hey, 3-Point Crew, my wife and I are planning a trip to Japan later this year. This is a vacation, but also a research trip. I think this trip will be beneficial and have a lasting impact on my work. He's not just anime, but I want to learn more not anime. I want to lean more towards the design, color, and texture of Tadahiro Usugi or Hokusai. I plan to do travel sketches, write, take reference photos, and visit shrines and art museums. I know there is an expectation that in order to have my portion of the trip be a write-off, I'm expected to work a certain amount of the time. So the question is having receipts, sketches, new work influenced by the trip, and reference photos enough to justify this as a write-off to the government? I won't blame you if I get audited. More so, I want to have strong evidence that this trip was impactful for my business and to take advantage of all the deductions I can for the business research I do on this trip. Any other forms of documentation you can recommend or trips you have are appreciated.
Can I jump in there really quick and just say we are not able to give tax or legal advice or financial advice, but we can give our opinions on what we do. Mm-hmm. So having said that,
and the conversations that we have with CPAs and stuff. So, but it's a good disclaimer. Don't trust. If you get audited, do not call me. And
right.
Well, we can tell what we do. Like for me, I'm more of a risk taker when it comes to tax deductions, and I don't even think I'm that risky. I just if I was to go to Japan and do a bunch of drawings and stuff, I would be, to me, I would feel justified that I'm adding to my visual library, my in my head, even if it's not.
Government would not see it that way.
For a specific project and stuff, and I would do some work from the trip and put it in my online store or something like that, and I would feel good. But Lee would have a different opinion.
No. It's an interesting question, and it's weird because as artists, our lives and our business, there's so much overlap that how do you even separate? I mean, isn't almost everything I do ends up in my work? I mean, can I just write off my kid as an entire lifetime deduction?
Right, because of all the inspiration.
Yeah, everything he does is like, oh, I could use that for a kid's book, whatever. So it's dangerous to start thinking that way. You really do need to lock down what the requirements are. I'll tell you this, just straight off the bat, if you want to start to make things more deductible, as a freelancer, official things that you enter will make things more deductible. For example, a class. If you go to Japan and you take a design class or an illustration class, painting workshop or something like that, it becomes easier to justify because a conference, for example, like if you go to the Bologna book fair or book conference, it's in Bologna, Italy, that is a one-to-one directly deductible expense. We're children's book illustrators. That's backable by a lifetime of books that are actually published, and so it's a justifiable expense. Now, there's some gray area in that. say you're a student and you never have published a book before, and you're trying to get into children's books, and you pay to go to Bologna, the IRS sort of looks at it as you can't have no income from a career of children's book illustrator and then deduct a bunch of stuff as if you did have a career. So it gets a little bit gray in that aspect, if that makes sense. In other words, if you're making money as a children's book illustrator and you go to a children's book fair, it becomes more deductible. So it's not just a hard line, but generally, if you write off a business trip, you can't just say I take a 7-day trip to Japan. I go to meet a gallery owner, for example, on one of the days. That trip will not be tax deductible. But typically, what the government looks at is more than 50% of your day needs to be spent in the direct activity that's going to yield a direct business benefit. It can't be, I'm going over there just to kind of get inspired and look around, and maybe it'll, it's not a tangible result.
But if you came back and you made a graphic novel, or you made a comic, or you made something with the
and it got published, that would make a better argument. Well, it's a great example. If all of a sudden I've got the graphic novel, it's for sale, the whole thing takes place in Japan,
right?
And it is
you're going to be fine. The other thing to remember,
you'd be hard pressed to not be able to justify that. But if you're trying to weasel a deduction on a trip that you're just trying to get inspired for, and maybe it does indirectly make you better, like what Will's saying is that is a direct expense. You've got a hard copy thing that's for sale. That's a lot easier to justify than, I was inspired and look at some of the cool stuff I saw, and it sort of changed my work overall. That's not a direct one-to-one, and so it'd be harder to justify that expense.
Right. The other thing to keep in mind, can I just throw this in there?
Yeah.
If you did get audited, if your trip costs, let's say $10,000, and you're in a 20 or 30% tax bracket, right? And you deduct that. If you have $2 or $3 grand sitting off to the side, and the government says, "Sorry, we're not going to allow that," oh well, you give them the money. The thing that people don't understand is, if you tell the government as a self-employed person filing your taxes, if you tell them, "I owe you $10,000 this year," they're going to go, "Okay." If you tell them, "I owe you $15,000 this year," they're going to go, "Okay." If you tell them you owe them $25,000, they're going to go, "Okay." You never know what is right or wrong, and neither do they. There are people that work at the IRS that will disagree on whether something should be allowed or not. So the law is gray, number one. So you have to decide where you want to be as far as risky, or just like if you have a CPA. I had 2 different CPAs that were like, "I think you might be okay on that, but if it were me, I'd just pay it." That's their answer for everything, right?
Right.
"I think you might be okay on that, but for me, I would just pay it." I'm like, I'm hiring you to save me money, and you're not saving me anything. I haven't heard one thing where you're like, "I would go ahead and take that. You should be able to take this. You should be able to take." I'm like, why am I hiring you? I could do this on my own. I'll just pay everything,
Right.
Right. I agree with Will. There's a certain amount of risk, but if the IRS was being conservative, let's say, for example, and that's the way to sort of judge it against yourself. Like, how well could I defend these actions? Like, for example, if he takes a trip to Japan, and he says, "Look, I made this whole sketchbook of Japan." How does that? They could easily just say, "Why wouldn't sketching in downtown Portland be the same as sketching?" What difference did it make that you sketched Japan?
Right.
Whereas if a teacher was there telling you, "Hey, here's the principles of learning," like I'm taking a workshop from Mark Foley in a watercolorist in June. And I'm going to write off that whole trip. Like, I'm going there to study with this guy, and I will be in class all day, 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock every day, studying with this guy. There's no way this trip isn't deductible. But just sketching for pleasure is going to be a tough sell, even if it somehow indirectly relates to your work later.
Yeah. What I've done is, we'll go to New York and spend 2 or 3, 4 weeks at my in-laws, my wife's grandma's beach house, right? And we'll hang out there. And one of the days I'll take a train into Manhattan, meet with publishers, meet with my agent, and then take the train back out to Long Island, right? And so I'll report that on my taxes as the train ticket that I bought, the plane ticket that I bought to go out to New York, and whatever expenses I incurred on that trip for that day. But anything outside of that, I don't say this whole vacation was a business
That plane
trip.
ticket is probably sus. If you got audited, you'd have to pay. But like Will said, okay,
Well, how
I
else
got
would
it
I get
wrong.
out? Would I
I'll
get
pay
out
it.
to New York? If I went straight from Arizona to New York, spent a day with my agent, and flew back, I could use the plane ticket, right?
You could in that instance, but
Okay.
what I would say with that is, if you wanted to go by the book, a prorated amount of that plane ticket, because most of your trip was for a vacation, and the IRS is pretty keen to people trying to do that.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there's no IRS agents listening today, but that's what I've been doing for 10 years. So.
I mean, like Will said, it's a gamble. Like, this is a weird little gap in the IRS rules. If I take a class or a workshop that's related to our business, it's 100% tax deductible, like we already talked about. If I go get my master's, which is like the turbocharged version of a class, it's not tax deductible, even in my own field that I've already been studying.
Crazy.
Yeah, so 10 years ago, I wrote off my master's degree because I feel like it should be deductible. And I, just like Will said, I will gamble it, and if I got to pay it, I will. Again, hopefully the IRS isn't listening.
Well, and that's another reason why it's good to try to live way below your means, is so that you can be slightly more aggressive on the deductions that you take, and have the money to back it up.
Right.
Yeah. So.
But the easy way to, Norman, if you set your next book in Japan and you make the book and it's published, then a better argument can be made.
Yeah.
And I would also sign up for a workshop while you're out there. That'd be awesome.
There you go.
You can go to, I forget what it's called, but Ukiyo-e Heroes, the thing that Jed Henry does? Mm-hmm. He's affiliated with a place, like a workshop that does the prints, that does the wood block carving, and they do weekend workshops, or I think any day of the week. You can go in there and they'll show you how to carve, and you can carve your own wood block and make it done, and like it's like a cool little workshop thing. I would absolutely do something like that.
Find something
Hey,
like that.
let me add to this too, that I'm going to be in Japan from October 11th through 24th. If anybody else is going to be there, love to hook up. I mean, I know it's a pretty big country, so we might not be in the same spot. I'll be in Tokyo for 3 days and kind of cruising around. But anyway, just want to throw that out there.
Are you going to deduct your trip?
Am I deducting my present? Of course.
100%.
100. Every single sushi roll is coming off my taxes. No, I'm not doing anything there that's business related. So it'd be a tough sell. Why I'd like to. I'd be hard to do that.
What if you did you said with the tarot decks that there's a company in Japan that wants to talk
I had that
about
conversation with my wife this morning, right when they emailed. I'm like, the trip's becoming deductible.
Okay.
We'll see if I visit Tadahira, or not Tadahira, but the Miyazaki studios or whatever. Maybe there'll be something, but as a writing off the whole trip, no, not going to happen.
Okay. Let's wrap this up, shall we?
Let's do.
Okay, everybody, thank you for joining us. 3-Point Perspective is made possible by SVSLearn, where becoming a great illustrator starts. Your hosts are Will Terry, Lee White, and I'm Jake Parker. All three of us are professional illustrators. Oh, wait, that's the intro. Let's see. Our podcast is produced
Busted.
Podcast produced by Daniel Tu. That's Daniel TU. Special thanks to our team behind the scenes here helping make this thing happen. Our keeper of the curriculum, Austin Shirtliff. Our Shownotes wrangler, Lily Howell. Our chief operations officer, Lisa Fott. And our illustrator, Annalise Black. Now, go draw something. We did it.
All right. Another one in the books.
I was going to say my back's feeling a ton better today than it was on Saturday. Do you remember I texted you about?
Because of your jumping?
Yeah.
What happened?
The couch?
Okay, so my 18-year-old son
jumps over.
Whose physique is like he's built like an 18-year-old boy who works out and is active, right?
Miles, right?
He's got the physique of Michelangelo's David.
He's an athletic kid.
He's an athletic kid. He's 6'2",
Wow.
and not an ounce of body fat on him. And so he's standing there next to the couch, and he's all, "Watch this, Dad." And he bunny hops over it, clears the couch easily.
From a standing standstill.
Standstill. And I'm like, and I could do that all day and all night when I was his age, even up till like 35. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I could do that. And so I do the jump, but I have to like contort my body in a way so I don't collapse into the couch, but like squeak over it. And in the process, I feel my back just go, "Roar!" And then when I landed, I feel it go, "Roar!"
Ooh.
And everyone's like, "Wow, Dad, you did it." I cleared it just barely.
Did you claim the back injury, or did you just kind of...
You played it off,
sort of note it, but yeah.
You played it off.
Nobody knew about my back injury until the next day. And then I hear my wife saying, "Daddy really hurt his back. You guys, you can't challenge him to do these kinds of things because he will do it."
The old man disclaimer. Oh, no.
So, but immediately after that happened, I was like, crap. I was so ticked off that I did that because I just hurt my back like 2 weeks ago doing yoga, of all things. I did some weird pose in yoga. Mm-hmm. And the next day I was just like, oh, should not have done that. And it tells you I need to do more core workouts. That's what's going on here. But anyways, I just gotten clear of that back pain. And I was feeling great. Mm-hmm. I was bouncing up and down the stairs and whatnot. And then I heard it again. I was so ticked off. But I walked right out of the room. They're like, "Oh, good job, Dad." I'm like, "Yep, see you kids later." And I went straight to the ibuprofen downstairs.
I'm out.
Started doing weird stretches and trying to get it loosened up. And now it's like...
That's what sucks. I think I'm going to have surgery on my shoulder.
Oh, really?
Actually, I think something tore. They're going to send me... I got to go do the MRI in a couple of weeks. Because it's not getting better with physical. I'm spending, going to physical therapy twice a week, and it's just not changing. So, old man problems.
Yeah, that's not a good sign, is it?
You want to hear my old man thing?
Absolutely. So
I went snowboarding with my son down this. I used to hike up this road, mm-hmm. and so I go up there and I'd hike up and we'd snowboard down the road when it was closed in the winter, and. This was a few years ago. I fell because it was really icy, and that's how you kind of want it because the road isn't very steep. So you need to get you need to be able to go fast. And I totally lost my edge and fell on my hip, and I had this hematoma that was looked like I'd been in a car accident. And this was when Lori was still alive, and I was trying to hide it from her, right? Because I didn't want to get sidelined, you can't go up there anymore, Right. I hid it for 2 weeks, and then I let my guard down when I was getting dressed, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, what's that?"
You're like, "Oh, that's old. It's old."
Yeah, that's old news.
About that.
That is crazy. So we can't do what we used to do. Right. I will say, though, we are way more active than the generation before us.
Oh, it's night and day between that group.
I saw yesterday, we were in Sedona. I saw this old guy. I mean, he had to be in his mid-70s. And he's one of those spider body types on a mountain bike. Really nice mountain bike. And I used to mountain bike every day on really tough trails in Utah. Mm-hmm. The trail in Sedona that we were hiking on, I saw a lot of mountain bike tracks. So I was like, we'll probably see some mountain bikers on this. I did not expect to see this 75-year-old dude. And there were tough drops and obstacles. And he was hopping over everything. I mean, he was like they weren't even there. And I'm thinking, back when we were young kids, 75-year-olds were like, they were sitting in a chair and like,
If they were alive.
if they were even alive. Yeah. It's crazy.
One of my friends,
Yeah.
one of my best friends that I grew up with is a long distance mountain bike racer. He's our age. He just got done with a race where they did 170 miles the first day,
Wow.
On a mountain bike?
170 miles the second
my
day on
God.
single track trails.
Oh my gosh.
This
that's
is
crazy.
a thing in Florida. I think it's called you can look it up. It's called the Hurricane, I think is how you say it.
Wow.
It's almost 500 miles, 170, and then like 75 to 90 or whatever on the last day.
Wow.
And so he would sleep for 4 hours. Like they're riding at night with the lights on, and he's our age, and just finished it. So like it's a different. I was looking through. My wife and I are going through a bunch of stuff trying to clear out our basement and garage and stuff. I'm going through all these pictures. I find this picture of my grandparents, and they weren't. Like they're younger, like you know.
Yeah.
But they're like a little bit older than me now, like probably 60, 61 or something.
Yeah.
And they looked like grandparents. I mean, they look like old people. Mm-hmm. And the people I'm around now don't look like that.
No.
That's amazing.
It's a different era for sure. Even my mom, she's 86 now. She was a flamenco dancer up till a few years ago.
What's a flamingo dancer?
She dances riding a flamingo.
It's like from Spain.
Yeah, I know.
Spanish. Oh.
He froze. It was a stupid attempt at humor.
I said she dances riding a flamingo around. Didn't record me.
That's awesome.
All right, you guys.